The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
So welcome once again to the Ask the Expert webinar put on by First Canada. Today's is very interesting because we're going to talk about the events that we had in Ontario, the district events that we had at Durham College and Georgian College, which were pretty exciting events as it turned out. There's lots of things going on in First last weekend, all sorts of things that don't usually happen, like the issues that were going in Montreal and so forth. But we're going to concern ourselves with, in this next half hour, with our two events at Georgian College and Durham College. So, as always, these webinars are being recorded and they will be downloaded or uploaded, I guess, to the First Robotics Canada YouTube channel, and the playlist is Ask the Expert webinar, so you can listen to them there. If you do have any questions during the course of this webinar, if you would type them into the questions panel down at the bottom of your screen, and we'll get to them as we go along. So thanks for joining us, and if you're not live and you're listening on YouTube, you are welcome to email any questions you have to First Canada or to me at pkeenan@firstinspires.org. So just a couple of quick housekeeping reminders for those teams that have not yet competed and maybe are going to be competing shortly at Ryerson or then after that at York and Waterloo, is to please make sure to print out your team roster from your dashboard. They are being heavily scrutinized because it's a document that we want to make sure that everybody's done their consent and release. I would also remind you on the day you load in, the day 0 of your event, to make sure you bring your robot lockup form for those teams that are going to Ryerson or the next events and are participating next week starting Saturday at the big robot event at the Ontario Science Centre. All of the times that you open your robot and lock it up, you need to include those. A reminder to make sure that you bring tools and safety glasses to your event. Safety glasses should be with the individual students so they can get in the pits. And as it turned out this week, I think as it turns out every week, scouting was a big deal. So make sure that you're remembering that. Georgian, I know one of the rookie teams had made an arrangement at the start of the event with a much larger veteran team that helped them with their scouting. And I think it paid off since it turned out they ended up being a picker. So please keep that in mind. Teams will definitely help you if you ask for help. So week 1, Durham College in Oshawa, Georgian College in Barrie. You can see that there is no week 2 event in Ontario next week. There's a week 3 event, and many people from Ontario are going out midweek, the week after, to BC to help out at the first regional that's taking place in BC. As you can see, it's from March 13th to 16th. With us tonight from the 2 different events, we have mentor Matt Ciprietti from Team 4039 Makeshift Robotics. We have team member grade 12 student Julian Curalli from Team 6513, who was at the Durham event from the Woodbridge Wyverns. And we have Aidan Baksh from Team 4476, the champions of the Durham event and also the Chairman's Award winner. So maybe we could start with Matt, and Matt, you could maybe tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey everyone, my name's Matt Ciprietti. I'm one of the lead mentors of Team 4039 Makeshift Robotics. I've been doing this since the rookie year of the team, 2012, and I'm a teacher at St. Mary's High School, where the team is. Actually, just came from a meeting just now where we debriefed our time at Georgian. So this is good timing.
And maybe Julian, you could tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello, everyone. As Paul mentioned, my name is Julian Curalli, grade 12 student, one of the co-captains of Wyvern Robotics, and my role on the team is part of drive team, build team, and one of the lead programmers.
And then Aidan from Team 4476.
Right. So I am a grade 12 student on Waffles, and I've been on the team since grade 8. I've been every role on the drive team except for drive coach, and I am our team's design lead right now. So.
Okay, well, thanks very much. So we're going to start with Aidan and Julian and the Durham event. So maybe we'll start off with you, Aidan, since it was a great weekend for the Waffles, and maybe you could tell us how the event went for those people who are on the webinar tonight who don't know what happened at that event with your team.
Sure. Julian, do you want to start? Or
well, why don't we start with you, Aidan, since...
Okay. Yeah, sure. So from our perspective, the event went smoother than any event I have ever been at as a student, at least for our team. We had a couple small electrical problems at the beginning of the event, but beyond that, we didn't really have any major robot problems. The team worked really well as a whole, and we seeded second after qualifications, got picked by the first seed 610, and went on to win the regional. And we also won our first ever Chairman's Award, which was a huge shock to our entire team. So,
well, congratulations on that. And maybe Julian, you can talk a little bit about your event and your team.
So I would definitely agree with Aidan. It's one of the best events I've been to in the 2 years of Team 6513. We went to the Durham event last year, and it was a very big improvement from this year. Unfortunately, we didn't do so well in terms of qualification ranking. We had some major mechanical issues that put us back a bit. But on the brighter side, we were picked by the 6th Alliance we were the second pick of the 6th Alliance, but unfortunately we were eliminated in the quarterfinals.
And you also won an award, I hear.
Yes, we also won the Entrepreneurship Award.
That's good. Congratulations on that. So I'll go back to you then, Aidan. Was the game played the way your team expected it would, or was there something that was different about it?
Yeah, so everything played out pretty much as we kind of expected it would be. Getting control of switches in the scale early was super important. So having autonomouses that could do 1 or even 2 cubes, which we got working by the end, was like super valuable. And then it turned out that in most matches, even having like a double climb or something like that couldn't make up for a point deficit incurred by not having the scale for, say, the entire match. And so most matches were decided solely by the switches in the scale, but there were a few that were very, very close that were decided by climbs.
And, well, thanks for that. Julian, did you find anything that was surprised your team about how the games went?
In my perspective, to be honest, I found a lot of penalties being called. Tech fouls in the null territory was probably the most called foul. I think the head ref at Durham said on the First Updates Now webinar that there was over 150 tech fouls called over the weekend at Durham. So that really surprised me, and it really benefited teams of the opposite alliance if teams weren't knowledgeable in that area of the rulebook.
So do you think it was that they just didn't know the rules?
I think it was, yes, that, and also the deal with trying to cross the field while someone is in the zone. Mm-hmm. I found teams wanted to take the short way to the field instead of taking the long, safe route to avoid that 25-point foul.
So, Aidan, you were saying something about how it was very important to gain control of the scale. So that's, I guess, in the question I've listed here, how were points achieved? I guess that was big. Did you ever see a match where there was nobody on one side that could put things on the scale, like where you played against robots that didn't have that capability, none of the three?
Yeah, there were definitely a lot of alliances that had no scale capabilities, and that's just down to robot design choices by the individual teams. But that makes it a lot easier for an alliance with a scale robot to win the match, because the alliance without the scale robot has to take control of both switches to just equalize the points, and then it comes down to the end game. It becomes a lot harder to win as an alliance with no scale capabilities, although it is still possible. But yeah, that was definitely something that happened very often in qualifications. Less so in eliminations, because most alliances had some scale capabilities, but yeah, it was definitely very, very prevalent.
Mm-hmm. Now, I did notice, and I watched a few of the videos this afternoon to see what was going on. I think most of them involved 610. I think they were the ones that posted them. Looked like they were taking the video. And I did notice that I believe they were in one game where they were just dumping constantly onto the scale, and there was the other side couldn't do anything about that. They couldn't put anything on their own side of the scale. Is there a benefit to having like 10 cubes up there if the other team's not doing that, the other alliance?
I mean, there's no huge benefit for, say, a difference between 5 and 10, but in terms of 610 doing that, and we did it in a couple of our later quals matches, it's just really, if you're already ahead in the match, then why not continue trying to like put cubes on, just as a better practice for your drive team? Because as events go further, there will be more and more robots capable of putting up a lot of cubes, and so when you have more practice trying to load onto a more full scale, it'll just benefit you more in the later competitions.
That makes a lot of sense. So that sort of explains it. Julian, you said your team struggled. What are you going to do between now and or before, in the week that you have to work on your robot before your second event?
So luckily we were able to resolve our main issues at the event in order to progress further. But in the 6-hour unbag before our next event, we mainly plan to redesign our ramp for our wings. One of our issues was that we were getting beached on the platform, so 610 kindly gave us their spare wheels, and it increased the radius of our wheels by about a ½ inch, which in turn lifted our wings up from the platform a ½ inch. So teams were having trouble getting onto our wings in order to lift them up. So we are going to be planning to redesign that subsystem in the week off, or in the unbag time, and also improving our autos.
Sounds good. Sounds like it's some gracious professionalism at work at that event from 610.
Yeah, totally. They were the ones who won the award, so yeah. We couldn't have gone through it without their help.
That's good to hear. Aidan, last question for you. How important was the second pick for your alliance?
6110 was an awesome second robot. They were great to work with, and they were a robot as a third pick, a third robot, second pick, that could both play very good defense, and they could add cubes to the switch fairly effectively. So that was huge. It helped us maintain control of our opponent's switch throughout eliminations, and because it just, if they're not scoring points on their own switch, then they have to take the scale in order to score points, and so that allowed us to really just control the match even further, having that third robot that could also contribute to scoring quite well.
And what was the third robot that you had in your alliance?
Team 6110.
And they're a second year team.
Yep.
Oh, that's good.
Third year, I believe.
Maybe third. I can't remember where the 6,000 started last year. I know Julian's team at 6513 was a rookie last year, but you're perhaps right about 6110.
Yeah, they're a third year team.
Well, okay. Well, thanks very much, guys. We're going to move on to Matt and hear a little bit about the Georgian event. So, Matt, you guys did well, as someone was saying to me when one of the few matches I watched. They said, "Man, 40-39 always finds a way to do well."
Yeah, we did reasonably well. We're pretty happy with how it went. We ended up making a run to finals. We were beat out in the second match by a fairly close match. I think it was 3-17 to 3-13. But yeah, it ended up going pretty well, I guess you could say. For us, we picked up a quality award as well for the robot Spark this year. The robot, as a bunch of people noticed, obviously when we were there, was a low bot. We decided to focus on the switch and the exchange, and as well as loading from the portals this year, and being able to pick up from the floor as well. So by focusing on that, we were hoping to specialize a little bit in being very, very fast and very agile at just doing those tasks. And as some of the experts in FIRST would say with strategic design, focus on doing one or two things and doing them well, rather than trying to do everything and being only so-so at it. So that's kind of where we focused our efforts. This was obviously a week one event, and it's the first time we've done a week one event. So we found that a little bit challenging in terms of the time frame, because we're used to competing in week 3 and beyond usually. So the original workflows that we had for the team around preparing for awards and driver practice and things like that were originally designed around competing a little bit later. So we had to rejig ourselves a little bit and scramble to be ready for week 1. And we were impressed with the level of play for a week 1 event. And the Georgian event itself was nice. It had there were 28 teams there. Compact venue, reminded me a little bit of Waterloo, with a little bit less seating. And on the whole, we really enjoyed our time there.
Yeah, it was a good event. That was the second year they've had it. I was at both of them. Saw a similar number of games at both, actually, which is not usually very many. Yeah, it was interesting. There were some good rookie teams, I thought, that followed that same strategy
for sure
you mentioned. Yep. I guess one of the... I think I'm getting feedback from you, Matt, but one of the things... That's okay. One of the things that I was impressed with was that the robots were quite competitive, and the rookies obviously had gotten some good practice in and gotten some good advice, so it worked out quite well. I didn't see that many games, so I didn't notice if the same thing that Aidan and Julian were talking about, the number of tech fouls and penalties, was the same. Did you notice that?
There was definitely a fair number of fouls and tech fouls, including in our last finals match, where we had to shift our strategy fairly dramatically, because the one of the robots on our alliance wasn't able to score on the scale anymore, so we had to switch to a more aggressive defense strategy, which unfortunately drew fouls, because as was mentioned before, when you're working in the platform zone, sometimes you can't see on the other side of the field. It can be difficult to judge where your robot is relative to others, and it tends to draw things like tech fouls, which is unfortunate. Because they do add up pretty quickly.
Yeah. So we had mentioned when we listened to Julian and Aidan, asked them if they had thought the game would be played the way their teams had planned and expected, and you guys had a specific strategy. Obviously you got to the final, so it must have played out. Is that really what you had expected?
Yeah, more or less. We knew that our robot would be most effective when paired with a scale bot, and it was. We were with 1325, which had an awesome robot that was able to really effectively hit the scale. And they, I believe, were the only team there that had a 2-cube auto onto the scale, and we were one of the only teams there that had a 2-cube auto onto the switch. So in that regard, we complemented each other quite well. Probably the two best scale robots there picked each other at the beginning of alliance selection. 1360 had seeded first, and they selected 1305, and they were a very potent combo as well, because they were able to score on the scale or the switch quite quickly. One thing that one big advantage that we had with 1325 was that they could get those 2 cubes up in auto, and with us getting the 2 cubes in the switch in auto, that gives you a beautiful advantage right off the bat, because those points start counting right away. So focusing on getting at least 1 cube in the switch or in the scale in auto is a really important tactic, because every second counts in this game. So the longer you have those switches and scales tipped into your favor, the more of a lead you're going to start gaining on your opponents.
Did you guys do any stats keeping to see if you put the 2 with 1325 on the scale, how long it would take the opposition to in teleop to even things out or to go ahead?
To match it?
Yeah.
No, I'm not sure we kept actual specific data, although we probably will go back and watch the videos and start looking at those types of things this week in preparation for our next event, because it would be useful to know for sure.
So then, based on what you're saying, obviously your team felt, as 1325 must have, that autonomous would be a key to the whole event. For sure,
because time is money, so to speak, in this event. The faster you can own those scales and switches, the more points you're going to get up on the board. The other key, if teams are able to do it, if they perhaps have a practice robot or even just a second drive base that isn't like their competition robot, but they're able to drive it around, is driver practice. Being able to navigate quickly around the field, around the obstacles of the switch and the scale, and being able to weave around other robots is very, very important. So that's something that we focus on with our team. We do have a practice bot, and we have our drivers out on our practice field, driving and training all the time, because being able to start an event with drivers who have driven around either the actual competition robot or something similar to it, it makes a huge difference, rather than trying to figure out the driving dynamics of your robot on the fly at your first event. So that's another key area of improvement that teams could hopefully pursue to be better prepared for their first event.
I guess that would help, as I think it was Julian said, that a lot of the tech files seem to be from people trying to squeeze past to take a shortcut to get around the field and end up in that null zone. So that might be a lesson for the teams that haven't gone to an event yet, is that you're going to get a lot of fouls if you go that way.
Yeah. So making sure your drivers know all the different zones to be aware of, and making sure they're able to maneuver the robot effectively is really important.
Because there really is not much room in the middle of the field.
No, there's very little to squeeze by. Yeah, if there's a robot scoring on the scale or something like that, you probably want to avoid that side completely, or you can draw fouls very easily.
Right. So what do you think other teams, maybe your team did well, that they may not add something, but what do you think other teams that you saw might think about adding before their second district event?
Well, we saw very few climbers at Georgian. There were a few of them. Some of them were quite effective. Some of them could probably be improved upon, and I'm sure some robots will add climbers where they did not exist previously, with the 30 pounds of withholding allowance and the 6 hours of unbag time, and a lot of robots that seem to be quite underweight. I think it would be feasible for a number of teams potentially to add a climbing ability before their second event.
Did you see a climber that you thought was a good design that would be easy to do in that 6 hours?
I guess it would depend on the design of their existing robot. I saw there were a number that if you already have an apparatus that can put a cube up on the scale, piggybacking something off to that could be viable, assuming the structure is strong enough to support your robot. I've seen just from other events, single extendable arms that were added onto the robot, like 610, for example, had that single telescoping arm on the back of the robot that could potentially be added if space and weight had been reserved for it. So I think it's potentially possible. Making good use of your 6 hours of unbag time is crucial, though, because you kind of need to have a plan, right? If you're going to implement a new system, you don't want to go into your event untested. So you should have everything laid out, almost like like a pit crew of an Indy car or something like that. Have everything laid out, ready to go, perhaps even and practice ahead of time every move that you're going to do, and have a checklist of all the things you want to accomplish in your own bag time, and you can accomplish a lot in that 6 hours, including some driver practice as well.
Yeah, that sounds good. Speaking of driver practice, there was a concern heading into the season because most of us practiced on a platform that was wooden, that the HDPE, I think it was, would be slippery. Was it, in fact, kind of slippery?
It seems a bit slippery. Our robot was okay. If you get a good running start at it, you'll get up it. But the wheels definitely will slip more, I think, on that surface than on the plywood that most of our fields have.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's interesting. And again, I guess the last question for you. You're the third team on your alliance. Your situation was different than the one that Julian and Aidan had, because there were far fewer teams at Georgian and Durham. What were you looking for on that third robot?
So at an event like that, when I guess there were only 28 teams, once you're picking your third robot, reliability is pretty key. You want a robot that hopefully isn't going to break down on the field, has a reliable drivetrain, one that's and also reliable drivers, and human players too. Our scouts will capture data both on the scoring performance of a robot, but also anecdotal notes on the driving ability of the robots, or the human players' ability to load cubes and things like that. So looking for a robot that's reliable and consistent is a really important characteristic in a third robot. So that was a primary concern. In our case, our third robot, which was Falcon Automation 6987, a rookie team, they had an intake that was able to spit out the cubes into the exchange. So we tasked them with that for most of the matches. So it actually was a pretty good division of responsibility. 1325 focused on the scale. We focused on both the home and away switch, hammering it with cubes, and 6987 focused on grabbing cubes and putting them into the exchange so that we could at least get the levitate power up.
Mm-hmm. Well, I did actually speak to the mentor of, I spoke to all the rookie teams, but the mentor of the Falcons, Fenland Falls, and he was so thrilled with being able to be in that alliance and getting into the playoffs, and he was very, very excited with lots of plans of changes to make before they get to their second event. So
I hope they do. Yeah, we were working with them a little bit during the lunch hour to try to shore up the robot, reinforce a few things, and that their robot certainly has a lot of potential. I mean, it was good at Georgian, and I think it'll only get better at later events.
Well, that's great. Well, thank you very much for all of those great tips. I think the one that rookies probably don't pay enough attention to is the point you made about making sure your robot's reliable and it's going to work throughout the length and of the time that you're in that event. Because as you mentioned, 1325 had some issues in the finals. So even the best of teams are going to have some issues. If you're reliable, teams are looking for that for sure.
Oh, definitely. Like we prioritize our robot functions every year at the beginning of our build season, and the number one robot function, which often seems to get overlooked, is ability to move. Right? It seems like it's something that's taken for granted, right? Well, of course your robot drives, but does it drive reliably? Is it going to be a bulletproof drivetrain? Is that the one thing that will never fail on your robot? Right. And that's something, a really, really key thing. What happened with 1325 was sort of a random, unfortunate thing, I believe, with their pneumatics. But the ability to drive was never in question there. So that's an important one.
For sure. So just a couple of things to end off, and this has been one of the better webinars that we've had, due to the guests, no doubt. Matt, you're going to Ryerson. I checked that, so I know that. Excited about that? Ryerson.
Oh yes, I think Ryerson would be a great event. We haven't competed at Ryerson before either. We've gone there to scout at Ryerson, but looking forward to playing there.
And Julian, what's your second event?
We are going to the York University event.
All right, that's almost in your backyard, I guess.
Yep, it's about a 5-minute drive from our school, so we're looking forward to that one.
And Aidan, you guys are heading north, I think.
Yeah, we're going up to North Bay. There's not a lot of events particularly close to Kingston, and we've had a ton of fun at North Bay before. It's always a really great event. All of the people are super great there. They're so nice, and the event in general is just very well run. So yeah, we're going back there.
Well,
yeah.
I would second what you said. I think anybody who's gone to North Bay can't believe what a great event it is. It's just the whole town buys in. It's an amazing event. If you haven't been, you should. Even if you just want to go up to watch, it is a great venue. And I know I'm going there with this team. I have helped a little bit, the 73-29, which is the Afghan all-girls team. So that's going to be a great event that we're looking at. Now, I obviously Matt's going to be there, so he's going to be watching. I know you're pretty close. Julian, will you be heading out to Ryerson to watch?
Originally, my plan was to go, but we are actually going on vacation, so I won't be able to make it out. I was there last year, and it was a great event. They put out the caliber of teams there was great, and just the atmosphere at Ryerson was unlike the other that I've been to.
Yeah, and what about you, Aidan? Are you gonna be able to make it?
I'm not that close to the GTA, so no, I won't be volunteering at Ryerson or going to watch, but I'll definitely be watching from home.
Oh, that'll be great.
It'll be a very interesting event.
So, are there any big changes, Julian and Aidan, for your robots for your next event?
Yeah, you want to go first?
Julian, why don't you start us off?
All right, I'll take it.
Sure. Go.
Yeah. So one of our big, as I mentioned before, one of our major problems, but a minor problem that we have to fix is the wing elevation. So we only have about 3 pounds to play with. So the design team is, as well as with our mentors, are coming up with some ideas as a way to improve how teams can get on to our wings. If you guys don't know, or for the teams that haven't seen us compete, we have the capability of doing a triple climb. Unfortunately, because of the problems that occurred to us during the event, we weren't able to show it off. At most, we were able to do a double climb, but it had the potential for a triple climb. But as I mentioned, the other team couldn't get onto our ramp. So that will be one of our main focuses. Another main focus for us will be refining our auto programs. We did have problems with some sensors, so we are looking to nail that down. And as always, driver practice. A driver can never get enough practice, so that's one thing that we were taught in our rookie year last year is practice as much as you can. It goes a long way.
So let's just to close out. Then we're going to take a couple of questions in a minute, but starting with you, Matt. One tip that you would give to rookies that maybe haven't competed yet?
I guess going back to what was just said again, driver practice is key if you can swing it during your unbag time. There's nothing that compares to actually having your hands on the robot that you'll be competing with. And if I can add one more, scouting as well. Scouting, it can never be underestimated. The value of good scouting is crucial. You never know when you'll find yourself in a position to be an alliance captain, sometimes very unexpectedly so. So you want to have a plan for that. And even if your team is too small to have its own dedicated scouting team, as was mentioned before, one thing that you can do is potentially partner up with a more experienced team at your event, and I'm sure there will be teams that are more than willing to share their scouting data with a rookie team that's just trying to better themselves and get a little bit more of a foothold in the world of first. So don't be afraid to approach one of those veteran teams, especially before the event, and ask if they might help you with that.
I think I forgot, Aidan, to let you tell us what your team might be changing before I got to this question, and Matt. Is there anything that a team that wins an event and is the chairman's award winner, is there anything they need to work on?
There's always things to improve on. Our intake had a fair bit of trouble picking up cubes when they were on the platform. They would kind of just like slide away from us, as well as we'll be working on improving like autonomous, like multi-cube autonomous modes, and just improving general arm speed and doing some driver practice during our on-bag time. Because there's always things you can improve on. There's no limit to how good you can be, at least not one that's achievable in 6 weeks or even throughout the duration of a competition season. So there's definitely always things to work on.
And your one tip for rookies, if you had one?
I guess there's kind of two things. One's competition, just like generally about competition, and one is more game specific. So the general one is don't be afraid to ask for help from volunteers or more experienced teams. It's something we've gotten a lot of help from in the past, and we helped quite a few teams at Durham. It just makes overall like level of gameplay better when more robots are working, and it makes competitions both a lot more fun to compete in and to watch. As well as the more game-specific thing is that getting a ranking point in autonomous is super important for seeding high. Having a 0 RP match versus having a 1 RP match makes a big difference, and having a 2 RP match versus a 3 RP match also makes a big difference. So even if you don't have a deciding cube autonomous working, or even just a drive forward and drop, if that is your scale, make sure you have a drive forward auto working so that you can cross that baseline. And if you're with a team that does have a cube autonomous, that you can get that ranking point, because they really add up.
Okay, good, very good advice. And Julian, one tip from you?
I would have to agree with what Matt and Aidan have said. What they have said is very, very true. And also for the rookies, being a rookie team last year, make connections with as many teams as you can. Every team is there to help you out, and they're there to make you better as a team. And one thing that I found is teams will come up to you and ask if you need help. And it's just a great way to get to know the environment at first if you've never done it before. And it's unlike no other event where teams are coming up to you asking if you need help. So don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask questions. And like I said before, make connections with as many teams as you can. It'll be really beneficial for you.
So we have a couple of questions. One is from a student, says, one of our mentors wants to take out 2 of our drive sims to save weight. I told him it will hinder our ability to drive properly, but he doesn't believe me. He's on a rookie team, but he's not a rookie. What do you guys think? Maybe Matt, you can start.
Well, do you need the weight for something else? I guess that's a good question. The sim's about 3 pounds, so by removing 2, you'd get about six pounds out of it. If you feel that that's going to allow you to dramatically improve another mechanism, like a cube handling mechanism, and make another part of your game much stronger, then it might be a worthy trade-off. Removing sims means you're not going to accelerate as fast. You're not going to be as effective in a pushing match for defense. So if you think you might be tasked for defense, that might not be the best choice. Again, it's all about trade-offs in your design, right? If the weight's going to improve something else, then perhaps it's a viable strategy.
And as a rookie team, the chances of them being asked to defend in a playoff match are pretty good.
They can be pretty high, yeah.
Julian, what do you think?
I agree with Matt. It all depends on your scenario and what you think will benefit your team the most. Like Matt said, if you need a subsystem that needs improvement, it may be worthwhile to sacrifice the 2 sims for an extra 6 pounds of weight allowance. But if you're taking away 2 sim motors, you are giving up a lot of power and a lot of speed in your drivetrain. So it all depends on what your design is and what you want your robot to accomplish.
Aidan, do you have anything to add to that?
If you're running a 4-sim drivetrain right now, I would say definitely don't do it. 2-sim drivetrains just don't really have the power to get you around the field quickly. But if you're running a 6-sim drivetrain, then it's definitely a consideration, because a lot, like most teams, I'd say, would run 4-sim drivetrains, so that's definitely reasonable. The other thing you could possibly try is swapping out to mini sims and changing your gear ratio slightly to keep you at a similar speed. Mini sims are about 2/3 of the weight of sims, so they're about a little less than a pound less each. So if you're running a 4-sim drivetrain right now, you'd save about 4 pounds by swapping over to mini sims.
Mm-hmm. The last question we had was not really a question, so just because you probably wouldn't have seen it. What I was going to mention when Aidan was talking about what a great event the North Bay event was, is that in the first year we went up, the team that I was with before I took this job, and they have a great team social. A lot of events have had them. They don't always have them. It can be difficult to schedule. But North Bay always does, and it's always a great event. And the first year they did it, they had all-you-can-eat wings. And they have some great wing places in town as well. But they don't have that this year. I've been trying to convince them they should, but I guess they don't listen to me. But I do still believe that they have the all-you-can-eat poutine. And I'm supposed to say poutine, but that's not my accent. So if you get a chance to go to North Bay, you will love it. It's a great event. All the events have their own unique things about them, as Matt was talking about, how cozy both Waterloo and Georgian are. And there's just a different feel to Ryerson for sure, being at Old Maple Leaf Gardens. So there's lots of great reasons to go to different events. I guess the last point, the closing thoughts I would make, the one key thing, Matt said a lot of great things, but the one that resonated with me was this whole idea of week 1 events and whether to do them or not. And there are teams that just will not do them, and teams that think that they can prepare well enough to do them. So that's something maybe that rookies didn't think about, but in your second year, maybe that's a thought that you might have. So a great discussion today. Just as a reminder, there's lots of people that are willing to help. Many of us will be at the Ryerson event. One of the key ones is Mr. Chisholm, who is a first senior mentor, and whose team 1360, the Oakville community team, Orbit Robotics, won the Georgian event along with 1305 and the team from Gravenhurst. So great job for them. But again, just to echo what Matt said, what Julian kept bringing up, ask for help. Everybody will help you. They'll all be willing to help you. I know teams are dedicating people to help out with their rookie teams, especially those that came from distance. So please don't forget that. And once again, thank you, Matt Ciprietti from Team 4039, Julian Curalli from Team 6513, and Aidan Baksh from Team 4476 for being on tonight. And we will look forward to seeing and following your teams the rest of the season, and hopefully seeing every one of you at the district championships in Mississauga. So thanks once again, and good night, everybody.